but inland, shelter from the breeze, sunshine. It's looking like a fine, bright day for many, so temperatures of 9 to 11 Celsius won't feel too bad. A similar day to come on Thursday, perhaps fewer showers later as we progress into the afternoon. And then by Friday, many of the showers die away. It turns a bit milder, but it will also turn more unsettled in the far northwest.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the political correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the political correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
Good morning and welcome back to GB News. I'm Rosie Wright. It's 9 o'clock. Let's get you up to date. 105 countries, including Brazil, Canada and Russia, are going to sign a deal pledging to end and reverse deforestation by 2030. It's going to be the first major agreement at the COP26 summit. When combined, the full list of signatories will represent 85% of the world's forests. Boris Johnson will describe the pledge as a chance to end humanity's long history as nature's conqueror and instead become its custodian. The Queen has called for world leaders attending COP26 to work together to tackle climate change. In a video message played during the summit, she warned that the time for words has now moved to the time for action. The Queen also paid tribute to her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, for his environmental campaigning, a cause he tried to raise awareness for over 50 years.
In the coming days, the world has the chance to join in the shared objective of creating a safer, stabler future for our people and for the planet on which we depend. None of us underestimates the challenges ahead, but history has shown that when nations come together in common cause, there is always room for hope.
Environment Secretary George Eustice says that a British scallop trawler has now been released after being held by French authorities. Well, it comes after France backed down in a dispute over French vessels fishing in British waters. The French president warned they could block British boats from its ports from today if they fail to issue more licences to French fishermen. Mr Macron says the talks need to continue. Some MPs are calling for the rollout of smart motorways to be suspended because of safety concerns. The scheme, which uses a hard shoulder as a permanent traffic lane, has been criticised by the Commons Transport Select Committee. Concerns were raised after multiple incidents involving fatalities where broken-down vehicles were hit by other drivers from behind. Yesterday, demonstrators protested against smart motorways by marching to the Houses of Parliament. A new study has found that phone and video consultations with doctors are worse but more convenient than face-to-face appointments. Researchers at the University of Cambridge found that medics and patients feel that with teleconsultations, it's harder to build a trusting relationship, but it's more convenient for both sides as there are reduced waiting times, no travelling, and of course safety from infection. Some doctors, however, said that NHS technology is embarrassingly primitive for delivering teleconsultations. Dr. Felix Norton from the University of East Anglia told GB News that if used properly, it could be beneficial.
I don't think anyone thinks that telemedicine is a solution for all kinds of consultations. The key here is really to identify which types of consultations, which types of patients are going to be most suited to telemedicine, and to work on training clinicians to ensure that they deliver telemedicine consultations as effectively as possible.
The Australian Prime Minister has defended his handling of the scrapped submarine deal with France after the French president accused him of lying. Last month, Australia cancelled a $68 billion agreement with France, instead joining an alliance with the United States and Britain. That was in exchange for security intelligence and nuclear-powered submarines. Speaking at COP26, Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister, said he could deal with criticism of himself, but would not accept it of his country.
I'm not going to cop sledging of Australia. I'm not going to cop that on behalf of other Australians. I can deal with whatever people throw at me, but Australia has a proud record when it comes to our defence capability. That's why we'll be building these and we'll be building others, and Australia's service record, I think, needs no elaboration.
Campaigners are asking the Health Secretary to ensure that children with severe epilepsy can access medical cannabis. The campaign group End Our Pain says families have been paying thousands for private prescriptions, despite a change in law 3 years ago, which allows certain patients to access treatment through the NHS. The Department of Health and Social Care said licensed cannabis-based medicines are funded by the NHS, where there is clear evidence of their quality, safety and effectiveness. British singer Adele has revealed the track list for her highly anticipated 4th studio album that's just called 30. The new 12-song list was shared online after the singer recently broke records with her new single, Easy on Me. It had been streamed 24 million times within a week. You're up to date here on GB News. I'll be back with the headlines at 9:30. For now, though, over to Patrick and Mercy.
Right here on GB News. Thank you very much for everyone who's tuning in. I'm Patrick Christie's. This is, of course, the wonderful Mercy Muroki, and we've got a massive show lined up for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Is it Le Grand Surrender, or actually is it more like Le Grand Delay? I suspect that it's probably the latter, isn't it? As Emmanuel Macron decided that he was going to delay a little bit the cod wars that are taking place in the Channel. We're also going to be talking about something else that's taking place in the Channel, ladies and gents. We're going to be talking about the fact that, yet again, month on month now, record numbers of migrants have crossed that Channel. Priti Patel is under absolutely massive pressure to justify something that she said, which was that 70% of those people crossing were actually economic migrants and not genuine asylum seekers. We are, of course, going to be going all the way through to COP26. Interesting day, wasn't it? Joe Biden fell asleep for a little while, but hey, so did Boris Johnson. The Queen spoke as well. So did David Attenborough. Prince Charles got on the stage after a little trip as well. We're going to be talking about all of that and much, much more. But as ever, we want to hear from you, don't we? What's that email?
Yes, keep your views coming in as usual. gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll be reading those out across the show. So keep your views coming in. I believe we're going to talk about the COP this morning. We're going to give you a roundup about COP and what happened yesterday. So firstly, the Queen addressed the delegates of COP26 Climate Summit, urging them to rise above the politics of the moment and act for our children to create a safer, stabler future. And on a personal note, she added that she took great pride in how her dear late husband, Prince Philip, promoted environmental issues, and how proud she was of her son, Prince Charles, and Prince William for continuing to do so themselves. And the message was pre-recorded at Windsor Castle last week as the 95-year-old monarch continues to rest on doctors' advice.
As the impact of the environment on human progress was a subject close to the heart of my dear late husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. I, for one, hope that this conference will be one of those rare occasions where everyone will have the chance to rise above the politics of the moment and achieve true statesmanship.
Our Queen there, our dear Queen. Now, meanwhile, Prince Charles told world leaders that they must partner with businesses in a vast military-style campaign if they stand any hope whatsoever of achieving an end to the climate change crisis. Now, he likened the challenge that they face now to preparing for a war.
The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us just how devastating a global cross-border threat can be. Climate change and biodiversity loss are no different. In fact, they pose an even greater existential threat, to the extent that we have to put ourselves on what might be called a warlike footing.
Yes, and environmentalist David Attenborough is also at COP26. He told delegates that the time for action is now.
In my lifetime, I've witnessed a terrible decline. In yours, you could and should witness a wonderful recovery. That desperate hope, ladies and gentlemen, delegates, excellency, is why the world is looking to you and why you are here.
Gosh, that voice, eh? That voice. Anyway, meanwhile, speaking at the rally near the summit, Greta Thunberg told climate activists that politicians are pretending to take people's futures seriously and that COP26 will not actually create any change.
Change is not going to come from inside there. That is not leadership. This is leadership. Yeah! This is what leadership looks like. We say no more blah, blah, blah. No more exploitation of people and nature and the planet. We're sick and tired of it, and we're going to make the change, whether they like it or not.
Yes, that was Greta Thunberg there, speaking very passionately.
Very passionately indeed, and good for her. But amid all of the headlines of day one, it felt right to offer a little reminder, exemplified by the closing eyes of what some would say a sleepy Joe Biden, that not everyone will be watching what happens in Glasgow as attentively as they could do.
Yes, well, GBNews' political correspondent Tom Harwood is in Glasgow live for us now and can tell us about all the things that have been happening and what we can expect today.
That's right. We are here at the heart of COP26, in the middle of the SEC in Glasgow, the Scottish Exhibition Centre, where world leaders are coming in for another day of talks, of negotiations, and indeed of decisions, because we have heard our first big decision of COP already this morning, a pledge on deforestation. We'll be talking a little bit about that later on with the Environment Secretary here on GB News. We've got lots more to come as well, but I've been talking to people here at COP26. There have been many world leaders, many former world leaders walking around as well. And yesterday I had the chance to catch up with the former Prime Minister of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull, who told me a little bit about what he was doing, having flown halfway around the world to come to Glasgow.
These conferences are very important. I'm here talking about what really I think is the crisis within the energy crisis, which is the need for long-duration storage. So I'm part of the director of the International Hydropower Association, talking about the importance of pumped storage, which will make renewables reliable. And of course, I'm also here with Andrew Forrest and his big green hydrogen agenda. So, green hydrogen is the clean fuel that will be powering our railways, our cars, so much of our industry, and of course providing again, like pumped storage does, that backup to make renewables reliable. So, we can have a clean energy economy and actually have cheaper energy, but you've got to plan it. It's not just going to happen.
Now, Australia is belatedly committed to net zero by 2050. That's happened right now. Why didn't it happen under your time as Prime Minister?
Well, it wasn't really an issue in my time. The big focus in my time was it just wasn't a controversial issue. I think everyone just assumed that was where we were heading. That was certainly my view. But what we were focused on then was the 2030 target, and we took a target to Paris in 2015 to cut emissions from 2005 by 26 to 28%. And one of the disappointments here is that Mr Morrison has not increased that target, that what they call the national determined contribution. So that's, I mean, net zero by 2050. Look, everyone's committed. Everyone is committing. I mean, some countries have got a plan to get there. Australia doesn't, as it happens. So it's in practical terms, it's more aspirational. But every single government in Australia has been committed to net zero by 2050 for a long time. So it's not exactly a big stretch.
Is this a matter of embarrassment that Australia now per person is emitting more CO2 than even America, China or India?
Well, if that is the case, if we're emitting more per person than the United States, which I'm not arguing with you, but assuming we are, that's a function of being a society with a lot of coal mining, a lot of gas production, and the energy sector being mostly from burning coal. So all of that is something we have to address. It's something we've got to get on with and fix, and we can.
The former Prime Minister of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull there. That was an international perspective on COP26. And of course, this is an international event, but ultimately it's being held in the United Kingdom. And the people of the United Kingdom are the ones that matter for the elected leaders of the United Kingdom. So let's have a little look now, a little explore into how people are reacting to everything that's going on. The new Green Boris, how is he being received by the people of the United Kingdom? Well, I'm delighted to say that we can be joined by James Johnson, the former pollster at Number 10, now running JL Partners, a research company. Welcome to the programme, James. First of all, how does Britain feel about COP, if they feel very much about it at all?
Well, they do know what it is. Actually, the interesting thing that sort of marks out the UK compared to countries like the US, Australia and Canada, where opinion is quite polarised on the environment, people are very positive about the idea of doing things to go green. They want COP26 to be a success. They're slightly doubting how much of a success it will be, particularly because of the non-attendance of President Xi of China and Putin of Russia. But they do want it to go well. The hesitation they have, and the hesitation they have about the new Green Boris, is what is it going to cost them? And that's where the real worry comes in.
And this seems to be a bit of a creeping worry across the board for particularly the Conservative Party, given there's a constituency out there that sort of feels a bit left behind by this government. This government often talks about the lowest paid in society and trying to do some wealth redistribution to help them out. There's a lot of criticism that this government helps those at the top of society as well. But it's those in the middle, what Theresa May used to describe as the just about managings, who feel a little bit squeezed. You've been writing about this today. How much trouble are the Tories in with this constituency?
We did some polling off the back of the budget over this weekend, and we asked people who did the budget help the most. And 40% of people said people richer than me, 20% of people said people poorer than me, and only around 10% of people, especially amongst that key sort of squeeze middle group that you referred to there, say that it's for people like them. So there is this worry that perhaps the government is helping people on higher incomes and helping people on the very lower incomes, but not helping those people in the middle. And that's really, really important for the Conservatives, because it's those voters, whether in the North, the Midlands, or indeed in marginal seats in the South, which put Boris Johnson into Downing Street. So they're going to need to watch their flank on that. Things like the UC taper cut, things like the minimum wage lift, people nod approvingly about these things in focus groups. They tick yes when they hear about them in polls. But actually, when you sort of dig a bit deeper, people say, well, is that really going to benefit me? It's those people just slightly above the threshold for social benefits, people just above the threshold of where the minimum wage is going to, who are just starting to question whether the government's looking out for them. And that's going to be a key challenge for Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak over the next few months and years.
I was reading one of those focus groups that you were conducting, a quote from one of those focus groups that was really quite extraordinary, where someone said to you that they might as well take a slightly lower paid job. Now that there's an increased minimum wage, they might as well work fewer hours, have a better work-life balance, and end up with just about the same amount of money at the end of that. Is that something that you think is widely felt amongst the people of the UK right now?
Yeah, so I heard that just before the budget took place, when the minimum wage had been trailed, and I've heard it again since in groups, since the budget took place too. It speaks to this sense of fairness, because people always feel in that sort of bracket that they don't get the attention that they perhaps feel they deserve from the government. It's often frustration as well about people perhaps being on social benefits who get looked after by government. Tax dodging companies that people feel get given a free pass by government, while they, working all hours, working really hard, don't feel they get rewarded in the same way. So it was very striking hearing that person talk about that. Somebody on working all hours, really trying to juggle everything, but also having to cut everything back for the cost of living. For them, the minimum wage wasn't this great sort of progressive triumph, as it's perhaps been heralded by some in Westminster, but was actually something that bred a bit of resentment in them, bred a bit of frustration, that they weren't seeing a wage uplift either. So I'm not saying that the government should claw back on the minimum wage increase or anything like that. These are popular policies, and they're probably the right policies in policy terms, and that's much more important than what the public say. But it is just a risk that they also need to look at helping those people a bit more in the middle as well.
Do the Conservatives therefore need to think about the language that they use? There are a number of ministers who went round on all the broadcast channels after the budget saying that actually this was a budget that helped the bottom 3% the most by taking away from the top 3%. Is that potentially language that isn't all that helpful when it comes to the middle England voter, the kind of people that are actually going to swing the constituencies at the next general election?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I don't think that language is particularly helpful. It's a really easy trap that MPs and politicians fall into. You've got lots of campaign groups, pressure groups, very nobly, very rightly campaigning for people at the bottom end of the income scale. You've obviously got MPs in Westminster. There was an interesting study that came out earlier this year showing that actually Tory MPs as a whole were quite significantly more socially liberal, more economic, more left-wing on some of these issues than their voters. And of course, you also have the civil service, who again are oriented towards helping those people who are at the lower end. Now, as I say, there's nothing wrong with that, but politically, the Conservatives need to be careful. It happened with Cameron Osborne as well. They used to, when they lifted the personal allowance between 2010 and 2016 by quite a significant amount, the messaging was very rarely, this is a tax cut for you in your pocket. It was often, we're lifting the lowest paid out of tax. So just that nuance on message really makes a difference as to who voters feel the Conservatives are speaking to.
That's a really, really interesting piece of analysis. Thank you so much, James Johnson, former pollster at Number 10, for coming on and explaining just that little trap that the Tories may well be falling into. Well, I'm delighted to say that we can now speak to a very senior Conservative. George Eustice is the Environment Secretary and joins me now. I'm at COP. George Eustice is down in Westminster, and there seems to be a pretty good news story for the environment today that the government seems to have achieved. Deforestation within the next ending deforestation within the next 9 years. George Eustice, is this achievable?
Yes, it is. And there was a similar attempt in 2014 in New York to have a declaration of this sort. They only got about 40 countries to support at that juncture and not the finance to go with it. And what we've actually achieved this time round is over 100 countries, including Brazil, including Russia, including China, including the Democratic Republic of Congo and Indonesia. And these 100 countries between them represent around 85% of the world's forests. And linked to this as well, we've also got a commitment for significant finance to go with it. So around £9 billion of finance from governments, a further £5 billion from the private sector. And that's, I think, the big change from what was done previously.
So that certainly does sound like it's a bit changed. I've seen the criticism on social media that similar deals were signed in 2014 in New York, and indeed in 2017 there was a UN strategic framework on deforestation. But this, you're saying, goes further because it brings in those other countries. I wonder, though, how many people know that deforestation has ended in the northern hemisphere? It's forests in terms of the temperate zones of the world have been growing, and indeed deforestation has been the lowest that it's been in 40 years in terms of the tropical regions of the world. Is this potentially an easier target than many people are describing?
Well, it has moderated in some areas, but it's still been a challenge, obviously, in the Amazon in recent years, and in some of the forests as well, around Indonesia, for instance. So getting those countries to commit to this is a really important step forward. We've also got commitments, obviously, from Russia, which has got more forests than any other country in the world, and China as well, obviously, with its big land mass, is a big contributor to this as well. So the difference between this and previous agreements is just the sheer number of countries who've got joined up, but also countries that have previously been hesitant about getting involved, but are now today willing to show that commitment.
No, certainly it does seem like a political win that particularly China, particularly Brazil, those big polluting countries have come on board. Whether they'll stick to those commitments, I suppose, is another question. But I do want to move on now to talk about something that potentially is closer to the hearts of the people of the United Kingdom, an issue that actually affects many, many people living in our country, and that's the dispute between Britain and France over fishing. France seems to have taken a step back from its threats. To what extent will they actually take the noise down completely at this meeting on Thursday when Lord Frost meets a counterpart in Paris?
Well, look, we very much welcome the fact that France has stepped back from the threats that they made last Wednesday. Those threats to deliberately create border disruption and prevent UK vessels going into French ports would have been a breach of the agreement we've got with the European Union, and probably would have breached elements of EU law as well. So it's very welcome that they've stepped back from that. We've always been clear that we will licence any EU and French vessel that's entitled to access. They only have to demonstrate that they've got a track record of working, at least one day a year over a 4-year period of accessing our waters. The vast majority have been able to demonstrate that with the records that they have. There's a small number, 55 vessels, that have struggled to demonstrate that they previously accessed Jersey waters. But we've always been clear that if they can produce the evidence to support that, we're open to reviewing that. But it's also probably the case that in most instances, those vessels probably just didn't access Jersey waters during the relevant period.
So it's your opinion that many French vessels are actually trying to cheat the system, trying to lie to gain access to waters that they've never previously had access to. And yet the UK seems to be now talking about negotiating with the French, potentially rumours of a bit of a tit for tat, giving some more licences than we were expecting to in return for some French support over Northern Ireland. Does that sound fair to you?
Well, we will, implement what was agreed. So there's no new deal to be done. The deal on fisheries and indeed on trade with the European Union was done at the end of December last year. It's really now about implementing that. And so what we've always said throughout all of this is we've licensed about 1,700 vessels. That's 98% of those that applied. There's a small number that it appears don't have the track record of fishing, particularly in Jersey waters, so who aren't eligible for a licence under the terms of the agreement. But we obviously want to have good relations with France. If there is new evidence, we'll consider it. But we won't be departing from what was agreed last year.
Although whilst Emmanuel Macron has certainly climbed down from his extraordinary threats in that midnight deadline last night, it sounds like he seems to be under the impression that the UK is going to be a little bit more liberal with licence granting than it has been up until this point. Is that your understanding of the situation?
Well, look, there have been a few remaining issues that we've been working with the European Commission on, and the European Commission obviously leads on fisheries issues for France at the moment. Some of them are around an issue that's referred to as replacement vessels. That's where a fisherman might have had access to UK waters but then changed their vessel, and we need to work out whether that's a like-for-like replacement. So there's discussion about how to deal with that, and there's around 30 or so vessels in that area. Those discussions have been going on, and we've been working towards a resolution on that front. Then there's these remaining 55 vessels in Jersey, the majority of which it now appears, I think, don't have that track record of fishing in Jersey waters. But if there are some where there's new evidence, where they can demonstrate it, obviously we'll look at that. But we won't depart from the approach we've taken. We think our methodology is right. But obviously, if evidence can be brought forward, we'll consider it.
Now, I want to ask you about what the Prime Minister said yesterday in his opening address to COP26. He referred to Glasgow as the place where the Watt engine, the steam engine, was first invented, the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. And then he went on to describe the Watt engine as a doomsday machine. A recent survey has found that a majority of young people in this country feel like their futures are doomed. During the German elections earlier this year, young children ended up in hospital going on hunger strike, believing that Europe was going to descend into famine within their lifetimes. Was that doom language responsible from the Prime Minister when it's so divorced from the reality of the situation?
Well, I think on the opening day of COP, what you get from world leaders, and rightly so, is that with the 2 weeks ahead, it's very much addressing the nature of the challenge that we have, the fact that there's a huge amount to do, that we need ambition. That's the right kind of message on the first day. But what we've got to show now over the next 2 weeks, and I think we've started to show today with what we've secured on forests, for instance, is we've got to show that it is within our hands to reach the agreements that are going to tackle this challenge. We've got to show people hope. My view's always been that a message that is just about despair, it isn't a message that'll get people moving with you. But it's why the Prime Minister's also obviously pointed to all of the steps that we're taking, our commitment to net zero, decarbonising our electricity supply, decarbonising transport, planting more trees, big ambition from the UK in all of these areas. And it's that ambition that'll give people the hope and the confidence that we can solve this problem.
Well, thank you, George Eustace there. I hope that Boris can become a much more positive person than he has in the last few days, particularly in Rome and in COP. Well, I believe we can go to Boris Johnson speaking live now.
That we act now and we end the role of humanity as nature's conqueror and instead become nature's custodian. We have to stop the devastating loss of our forests, these great teeming ecosystems, trillion-pillared cathedrals of nature, 3 trillion-pillared cathedrals of nature that are the lungs of our planet. And the destruction, together with agriculture and other change of land use, that accounts for almost a quarter of all global emissions. So, if we want to keep the Paris goal of 1.5 degrees in sight and support communities in the front line of climate change, we must protect and restore the world's forests, and I believe we can do it. And many in this room have already made bold commitments, including President Widodo, who's introduced a moratorium on forest and peatland exploitation in Indonesia. President Duque, thank you. President Duque, who has taken fantastic strides in safeguarding the Colombian Amazon, as well as leaders of the countries of the Congo Basin who are working to protect their precious forest. And with today's Glasgow Leaders' Declaration, not 105, but I'm told that today 110. Is that right, Sandrine? 110 leaders have come together representing over 85% of the world's forest estate. They've made a landmark commitment to work together to halt and reverse deforestation and land degradation by 2030. Not just halt, but reverse. And that means more leaders than ever before have now signed up to protect our forests, from countries in the north and the south with temperate forests, tropical forests, and including nations like China, Russia, Brazil, some of the largest forest estates in the world. And what is most significant about this declaration is not just the range of countries coming together, but also that we're working in partnership with the private sector, with philanthropists, with indigenous people and local communities to address the economic drivers of deforestation. And there are interesting parallels here with our wider efforts on reducing emissions. For years we made pledges about reducing the use of coal, but what really matters is the rapid development of clean technologies with private sector investment. And this transformation has become an unparalleled economic opportunity for growth and for job creation. And so we're taking similar steps today to make forest conservation not just right for our planet, but right for our economies too. We know that 80% of tropical deforestation is driven by the global trade in agricultural commodities. So the UK and Indonesia have brought together countries that produce and consume these goods to agree a roadmap for sustainable trade so that we can grow our economies whilst reducing the pressure on our forests. And I'm delighted that this has now been signed by 28 countries, accounting for around 3/4 of global trade in these commodities. And as a result, cocoa farmers in West Africa should receive a better, fairer price for their products in return for protecting their forests. International trade standards should reward producers who shift their production to more sustainable methods, and assisted by new technology, supply chains can and will become ever more transparent. So as consumers, we will all be able to enjoy guilt-free chocolate. I mean, I suppose that's carbon guilt-free, not calorie guilt-free chocolate, safe in the knowledge that we have not just helped to prevent deforestation, but unlocking the opportunities of a sustainable food and land use system worth £4.5 trillion worth of trade by the end of this decade. We also want to mobilise global finance on an unprecedented scale. In the last decade, roughly 40 times more finance flowed into unsustainable land use practices than into forests protection and conservation, while agriculture, forests and other land use receives just 2% of available finance. So as we sign this declaration today, let's also galvanise a radical shift in public and private finance. Let's channel funds towards securing the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities and shift trillions towards supporting sustainable jobs, so that protecting our forests is not only the right course of action to tackle climate change, but the right course for a more prosperous future for us all. And like the advance of Birnam Wood at the end of Shakespeare's great Scottish tragedy, let's work together, not just to protect the forests, but also to ensure that the forests return. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Prime Minister, for setting the scene for this very ambitious set of commitments that we will have today. And now, can I please turn to President Duque, if you would like to use the lectern?
Prime Minister Boris Johnson speaking. Prime Minister Boris Johnson speaking there, of course. Well, that's it this morning for the briefing. We'll be bringing you updates from the floor of COP26 whenever something interesting happens throughout the day. And of course, we've already had that one agreement so far, a pretty substantial agreement that even Russia, China and Brazil ascribed to, ending deforestation. It sounds positive. Well, coming up next, it's To the Point with Patrick Christys and Mercy Meraki. But first, here's the weather.
Hello, good morning. A cold start out there for many of us, but a bright start. Plenty of blue skies and sunny spells expected through the rest of the day. There will be further showers in places, low pressure still close by, but as this low slowly moves off the scene, we pull this colder feed from the northwest. That's also containing a number of showers, but mainly to the north and the west of the UK. That's where the showers have continued through the night. Further showers for northern Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Western England and West Wales well through the morning and into the afternoon. Elsewhere, some mist patches first thing, they'll lift, and then plenty of sunny spells. One or two showers will develop elsewhere, but mostly they'll be focused towards the north and the west. Wherever they are, though, they'll be fairly fleeting, pushed through on a gusty breeze, and it will feel a little on the chilly side, I think, this afternoon.
with temperatures reaching 9 to 12 Celsius. And then after dark, those temperatures falling quite quickly. And we're looking at light winds across many southern and central and eastern parts of the country, as well as clear skies, allowing those temperatures to fall. A touch of frost in places as we start off Wednesday, with temperatures in the low single figures or in some shelter spots just below freezing. But those showers will be continuing around Irish Sea coasts into the north of Scotland, Northern Ireland. 1 or 2 expected for North Sea coasts as well. But away from the showers, plenty of clear or sunny spells expected throughout Wednesday. The brisker breeze coming all the way from the north will feel on the cold side, and it will feel particularly chilly if you're exposed to that wind on the North Sea coast. But inland, shelter from the breeze, sunshine. It's looking like a fine, bright day for many, so temperatures of 9 to 11 Celsius won't feel too bad. A similar day to come on Thursday, perhaps fewer showers later as we progress into the afternoon. And then by Friday, many of the showers die away. It turns a bit milder, but it will also turn more unsettled in the far northwest.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the political correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the political correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday right here on GB News for To The Point.